in general, I don't like New Year's resolutions. I'm a New Year's resolutions hater. And it turns out a bunch of my friends like making New Year's resolutions. And so I've had to rethink my position on it a little bit. Not so much that I'm really reconsidering my dislike of New Year's resolutions, but more than I'm acknowledging that other people might have a different point of view, and if it works for them, that's okay. And when I've been thinking about it, reframing it, what's really been happening is I've been thinking, why don't I like New Year's resolutions? What is it that I find repulsive about them? And I think that I've spent my entire adult life following vows. The vows I took at initiation, I've been following for over 30 years now. And when people talk about New Year's resolutions, oftentimes it's these really shallow, transient, temporary commitments that people make to do something. And you're lucky if it lasts 6 months. A lot of times your resolutions don't even last a month until February. What to speak of lasting a year? I mean, the very nature of a New Year's resolution is it's kind of got a 1-year life to it. That's just the very nature of it, because you make them every year. So the very nature of the New Year's resolution phenomena is it kind of lasts for a year at best. And most oftentimes it doesn't even last a month. So as somebody who's spent his whole life following vows, I've taken lifelong vows and I've followed them since I took them. Watching people make light of resolutions and vows, I find disturbing. I almost want to say, don't take some kind of vow you're not going to be able to keep. Wait until you're strong enough to keep your vows, and then take them. Don't erode away at your integrity. Don't erode away at your dignity, at your honor, by making promises and then breaking them. Wait until you can keep your commitments. Sometimes, people make commitments on, they make some kind of lifetime commitment, but they make it because they're feeling good on that day or that week. That's a terrible program. Make sure you want to make that commitment on your worst days. Then make the commitment. Because the very nature of a commitment is that you do it even when you don't want to. Otherwise, how is it a commitment? It's just a feeling. I feel like this today. I may feel differently tomorrow, so as long as I feel like this, we're good. That's not much of a commitment. It's a commitment to do whatever you feel like doing. And sometimes people think if they just commit to something, then that will give them strength and power to accomplish the commitment. But I spend a lot of my time counseling people who make commitments and then break them. And we got to bring them back. And so this idea that you make a commitment that you really can't keep, but you hope that you'll get the strength from making a commitment to keep it, I think that is just a road that has a very low likelihood of success. I think it's delusional. I think it wreaks havoc in people's lives and in the lives of those around them. And so, better wait. Don't make a cheesy New Year's resolution. Don't sully yourself. Don't erode away at the fabric of your own integrity by promising that you're going to do something that you're not going to do. Wait. Earn the right to make a commitment. Maybe in January we should start trying to earn the right to make a resolution. Maybe come January you can start doing stuff, and then maybe come July you can make your commitment after 6 months of doing something every single day. Then maybe you should make a commitment. But not that you do any manner of nonsense up until December 31st, and then you want to magically reinvent yourself from this weakened, indulgent space, and then you're going to fix everything. I think that's one of the reasons why I don't like New Year's resolutions. Also, I'm about lifetime resolutions. I think it's much more interesting and much more valuable to make lifetime resolutions. And to take the time required to figure out what you should be resolving to do, what you should be focusing on. What you focus on is what you value. If you are a devotee, but all you do is think about money all day, you're not really that much of a devotee. Maybe officially you are, but functionally you're a materialist, because that's what you're spending your time thinking about. What we focus on is what we value. So when you start making New Year's resolutions, if they're not chant 16 rounds, follow the 4 regular principles, come to the temple, worship Krishna, read Shastra, stay faithful, follow the rules, follow my vows. If those aren't at the top of your list, your religious vows, your religious commitments, your spiritual commitments, then by the very nature of, making a resolution to go on a diet or work out 3 times a week or, learn a new language or whatever other stuff people are doing, that's what's most important to you because that's what you're focused on. It's easy to focus on that other stuff. It's cheap stuff. The whole purpose of life is to focus on the big questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? What has ultimate value? What remains when everything else is gone? Where's the real amidst the false? Where's the permanent amidst the temporary? Where's the truth amidst all the lies? The material life's going to make you happy. That's what we should be focused on. Hey, who's at the top of the stairs? Is that Liv? You get like a gold star, 100%. You're totally working with your kid. I'm in ecstasy. Stay here no matter what they do. If you're working like that, we're good. You get less credit. It's okay. It's all right, you're breastfeed. You can't really jump around and breastfeed, so we're good. It's great. I got a bunch of people come to the temple. They get their kids. It's a weird phenomenon, and I forgive me for being bigoted, but somehow or other, Indian culture is a weird phenomenon where you let your kids run around and make noise when you come to the temple, and you don't think it's your responsibility to keep them quiet. It's a weird phenomenon. I don't know where it comes from. It's a cultural thing. But now my students are having babies, and so they've heard me chastise people their whole life, and so now they have their own kids, and they follow the rules. Which is that if you drive all the way to the temple with your child, you get to stay, even if they make noise. But you got to work for it. You got to bounce up and down, burn some calories, try to keep them happy, try to pacify them. Not that you disturb everyone's class and then just, it's like break time, temple's break time, where your kids run rampant, you don't do anything about it. Yeah, we should be asking the big questions of life. The small stuff, whatever. Okay, fine. Go to the gym more often, get on a diet, whatever. Don't go making that your big commitment of the year. Just go and do it. And when you want to think about what am I committed to, what am I resolving to do, what am I focused on, what am I meditating on, what's most important to me that it works its way into my mind as a thing I need to commit to, let that be the big stuff, always. What's my purpose? What am I on this planet to do? What's the most valuable thing? What should I dedicate my life to? Who am I? What is God? What is this world? Big stuff. So on one hand, I hate New Year's resolutions. Small H, I don't really hate them. Just using that term in the way it's used nowadays. I hate New Year's resolutions. I'm a hater of New Year's resolutions. I'm hating on New Year's resolutions because people don't keep their commitments. And I hate to see people erode away at their commitment-making power. I want people to make commitments they can keep and grow from one commitment to another, leaping from mountain peak to mountain peak in their life. Not falling down, not falling short. And so better you get your training wheels on before you use a big word like commitment. Get your training wheels off, before you use a big word like commitment. That's one reason. Number two is I find that most people's commitments are super paltry and trivial. And my very purpose is to help people think about bigger items in life. So when I find people who I know focusing on smaller items, I'm disturbed because it's like, what are you doing? Why are you wasting your energy focusing on and committing to and resolving, meditating on these smaller things? Do them or don't do them, whatever, that's fine. But don't make that the thing you think about vis-a-vis commitments. Anyway, there's a story. It's an old story. The story was spoken by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he was instructing his disciple Sanatana Goswami. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was told a story. It was an illustrative story to communicate something similar to this. He said that there was a poor man, and he was at home, and he was morose, lamenting, crying. And a famous astrologer came to his home. The astrologer's name was Sarvagya, the knower of everything. And so Sarvagya came to his house and said, by looking at your palm or looking at your chart, whatever, I can see that you think you're poor, but you're not actually poor. Your father was very rich, and he left you an immense, immense inheritance. But he died elsewhere, and so you didn't get information about it. And so you're living here thinking you're poor, but actually you're super rich, and there's an inheritance waiting for you. But it's buried. Your father buried it. So valuable. And I will give you directions where to look. Don't go to the southern side of your home to dig. If you go to the southern side of your home, wasps will come. There's, whatever you call them, a wasp nest is there. Wasps will come and bite you, and you'll be miserable. More so than you are now. Don't dig to the south. Don't dig to the west. If you dig to the west, there is some ghost living there. Some yaksha is living there. And he will haunt you. And you'll never be... Your hand won't even touch that treasure. You won't even be able to sleep. You'll be so haunted. Don't dig to the west. Don't dig to the north. To the north, there's a big black cobra living there. And he'll bite you and eat you. Big snake. So don't dig to the north. Go to the east. Go to the east. And dig there. You dig to the east. Just a little bit of digging, and you'll find priceless treasure. Simple story. It's kind of like our whole philosophy put into a really simple parable. That's the story. The commentators tell you what it means. I mean, you also may be able to guess what it means. Just by understanding our tradition, you may be able to appreciate or think about what it means automatically. South. South is dakshin. In Sanskrit, the word south is dakshin. And also right, like right-handed, is also dakshin. Not to be confused with a donation, which is dakshina. You can't shorten that word. If you shorten it, it changes the meaning. Some words you can shorten. Govinda can become Govind. Dakshina cannot become dakshin. Changes the meaning of the word. How can dakshin mean south and also mean right? Do you understand, like right and left hand? Vama and dakshin. How can it mean south and also right? Because it's understood that you face east. And east is the kind of cardinal direction. So then your right-hand side is which direction? If you're facing east? South. That's how it happened. So if you dig on the southern side, you get wasps and bees biting you. Now, will wasps and bees kill you? They will not. I mean, theoretically, you could have a swarm of bees that killed you. But at least for the purpose of this discussion, they won't kill you. They will fully disturb you over and over again. And so that represents the idea that I will become happy by amassing material enjoyment, either by wealth or by sex or by power or by fame. That I'm going to find my happiness in materialism. Now there's a low side of materialism. There's a low side of materialism, which would be like a sex, drugs, and rock and roll side. That's the like seedy underbelly of materialism. But then there's the pious high side of materialism, which ultimately is the same thing. And that would be marriage and family and security and a home and a pension and a 401k and success and a good reputation. It's pious, but ultimately those things are still just as material as the lower side. The lower side is uglier and nastier and more quickly results in failure. But the high side is just as materialistic and ultimately leads you to the same frustration. Because no matter how big your house is, you could have a bigger house. Or ultimately, you're still going to die and be buried outside your house. House will be there, you'll be buried next to your house. He who dies with the most toys still dies. That idea that they win is a lie. One of the most all-pervasive lies of existence. If I get married, get a good job, get a good house, live in a nice place, have a good circle of friends, I've succeeded, I'll be happy. The pious or the impious side of materialism is still materialism. It's a material solution to a spiritual problem. It's trying to find a temporary solution to what is a perennial problem. Namely that here I am, a conscious being with an unlimited capacity to know and to love and to feel, but I'm trapped in a material body which cannot satisfy my soul, my ultimate heart's desire for permanence. And everything in this material world will be rent asunder by the ravages of time in due course. Everything decays. Entropy is a fact. The second law of thermodynamics is all pervasive. Everything gets ripped apart in due course of time. Which is why Krishna says, Kalo asmi lokakshay krit pravritam. I am time, the great destroyer of everything. That's the southern side. The western side, what was on the western side? A ghost. That ghost is the Siddha Kanda, the path of mystic perfection. In medieval and ancient India, yogis, what Marco Polo, the famous Italian traveler who went to China to discover the Silk Road, he spoke, or to follow the Silk Road, I don't know if he discovered it, he spoke about meeting jiujis, which was the Italian word that he came up with for yogis. He said, I met yogis, I think this was in the 13th century, and maybe 12th century, when Marco Polo was traveling. And he said, they drink mercury. It's a yoga thing. You drink mercury. It's a weird thing. So you drink mercury mixed with gold, and it's supposed to make you super powerful. I mean, for everything I've been able to study, it just kills you. Mercury is one of the most toxic substances on the planet, and somehow or other, like most classical forms of alchemy and medicine, like mercury. But it still seems to be toxic. Is that like a yogi thing where you treat gold, you treat mercury with mica or sulfur. The mercury represents the masculine energy, ultimately semen, and you treat it with mica or sulfur, which represents the yoni, the ovum. And there's a chemical reaction that takes place when mercury is treated with one of those two elements. It is able to chemically react with gold. So normally if you take a piece of gold and put it in mercury, it'll just sit in the mercury. But if you treat the mercury and activate it with mica or sulfur, I'm not exactly sure how the chemical activation takes place, but then when you put gold in the mercury, it'll just chemically react with the mercury and the gold will dissolve and become one with the mercury. So they would activate mercury and then put large quantities of gold in it. It was that way of consuming gold, because gold was considered to be a high metal, and if you ate it, it was like good for you, like a noble metal. This is scala naturae. It goes back to Aristotle and the Greeks, where there were noble metals and noble trees and noble this and that and the other thing. And the noble metal was gold and silver, and the lower metals were lead. And so the goal was to turn a lower metal, a base metal, into a noble metal like gold. And that was the program. So anyway, there was a whole thing with Mercury. I don't want to tangent off from class too far. But if you read medieval texts, specifically the Rasa Siddha texts of medieval India, you find this stuff was all the rage. How much? So much so that Marco Polo talks about it in his memoirs. On the western side is a ghost. Most people think the goal of yoga, classical hatha yoga, maybe not classical, we'll call it medieval yoga, hatha yoga, the goal of it is moksha or liberation. That's not true by looking at the medieval texts. The medieval texts talk about siddha. In fact, siddha is such a big deal, Patanjali even mentions it in a classical text, that you get siddhas from doing yoga. Siddhas are magical material abilities. Generally speaking, what people do with money. So if you have money now, you can buy a jet. You can fly wherever you want to fly. You have a pilot on standby. You can fly wherever you want to go. But for the yogis, you can fly on your own without any mechanical device. You follow? For most people, you get money and then you can buy whatever you want. For the yogi, you get prapti siddhi, and you can just manifest whatever you want. So the one side on the southern side is just classical materialism. I'm going to get wealth and acquire material things. The western side is the idea that by doing this semi-quasi-spiritual practice, I'll develop the ability to control reality and I'll become functionally like a superhero. I'll become incredibly powerful. I'll be able to control people with my mind. I'll be able to get whatever I want. Not through the normal method of buying it on credit, but from the atypical method that was quite typical in ancient India of just becoming incredibly powerful in terms of my mental focus, and I'll be able to telekinetically and through controlling people's thoughts and through clairvoyance and so on and so forth, I'll be able to control reality and live for a long time. Marco Polo said, I met the Gyujis, they drink mercury and live for 200 years. That was the goal, to live longer than you're supposed to become impervious to the effects of time. It ultimately doesn't work. How do we know? Well, because there's no 300-year-old yogis walking around. That's how you know. Maybe you live to 120. I don't even think anybody makes 230. I'm fairly certain nobody makes 230. Sometimes you hear people like, I'm 220 years old. You're like, yeah, show me a birth certificate. Then I'll believe you. You look like you're about 60. I got pictures of you in preschool 55 years ago. So it's a little difficult to relate to from a Western point of view, but I tried my best to explain it. It's a cultural phenomenon that yoga was a big method of trying to control and slow down time and get things even money couldn't buy, like an extra long life and the ability to control people, make people do what you want, but not just by paying them money, actually by controlling their thoughts. And so there was a huge fascination in medieval India. And that's likened to a ghost, the specter of this thing that you're chasing after, that either A, you'll never achieve, or B, once you achieve it, it still doesn't satisfy. I personally think the most insane, ridiculous myth in all of creation is the idea that you'll ever become materially happy. Because just the physics of it, you're going to die, and everything materially that might give you happiness, you're ultimately not going to be able to take with you. And so how could you really enjoy that or feel satisfied? Because it's just right down the road. It's just right there. It's about to end. I'm 49. I remember being 9 like it was yesterday. Now I'm 49. For sure, half my life is over, if not more. My family usually lives to mid-90s, so I'll probably be kicking around, probably something like that. But for sure, my life's half over, if not more. Could easily be more. But I remember being 9, like it was like 5 minutes ago. Now I'm 49. I'm sure I'm just going to blink a couple more times, and I'll be 89, 99. The illusion, the myth, the like ridiculous myth is that somehow everybody's not thinking about this all the time. How is it possible that people are just able to put this off and not think about the great existential dilemma that here I am building myself a sandcastle and the tide's coming in. Over and over again. And I'm like, Prometheus? Who's got to carry that stone up the hill? Sisyphus. That's right. Rhymes with syphilis. And sissy. So Sisyphus, he stole fire from the gods, right? Yes. He stole fire from the gods. He was forced to carry a stone up a hill, huge stone. Whenever he gets to the top of the hill, the stone would slip and roll all the way back down. He had to go back down and pick it up again. That's materialism. It's the living out of the Sisyphean myth in everybody's life on a different scale. And even the yoga is the same thing. It's even worse than the bees and the wasps because it's like specter of a thing you want to achieve that you'll never quite get to, that kind of haunts you, that you could have had it. And then whatever you get gets taken away, and when it gets taken away, you get pinched, just like being bit by a wasp. And on the northern side, big black snake going to devour you. What's that? That's the Jnana Kanda. The path of trying to become one with God in every way. Build a stairway to heaven. To disintegrate your individuality. To deny your individuality. To run away from the great blessing it is to exist. To be a concrete individual. To be able to exchange love and be united with people. Love is an amazing phenomenon. Love unites people and makes them one. But it forever depends on there being a difference between the two people in order for it to work its magic. If a mother loves her child and then becomes fundamentally one on every level with her child, what happens to her love? It evaporates. You become a mother who never had a child. The existence of the other allows for the beauty of love to again unite you. Individuality isn't a curse, it's a gift. It's also a fundamental part of reality, and any philosophy which attempts to disintegrate such a fundamental aspect of reality has a really high bar, because it would be like if I was to say, all of you right now are upside down. This is the ceiling and that's the floor. And gravity's holding you to the ceiling. It's like, all right, okay, prove it. You gotta prove it. Like you're making an out of the box, unusual claim, sure, then demonstrate it. So the idea that the goal is to become nothing or to become one and to give up individuality, you've got this insuperable obstacle, which is that why is there individuality in the first place? If that's the goal, if that's where we came from, how do we become many? How did the variety manifest within the one in the first place to get us to here? Well, this is all an illusion. Okay, how did the illusion of many, which itself is a variety, manifest in the oneness? People are traumatized by the individuality. They haven't learned how to deal with that powerful club. They haven't learned how to work with the beauty of being an individual, of being capable of love, and they haven't thought about what that says about the nature of ultimate reality and how a variegated world indicates a variegated absolute, and how the ability to love in this world means there should be the ability to love in that world, and how difference isn't always a bad thing. And in fact, it facilitates love. Without distinction, there's no love. People don't do this math. They get seduced by the idea of becoming one. And that's the big black snake that devours you on the northern side. So, in this simple parable, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is critiquing all of the major global phenomena within spirituality. And really just society. And like within the realm of human beings, to be honest. Human beings are going to tend towards materialism in two forms. What are the two forms of materialism? Pious and impious. That's right. But still fundamentally materialism. Then amongst those, then if you get really fancy, right? But you're still a materialist, then you trace after that yoga stuff. Telekinetic abilities and clairvoyance and all that superhero stuff, which just haunts you like a ghost. All within the realm of materialism, because your goal is something material. Then you've got spirituality, which comes in two flavors. Now, if your spirituality is give us this day our daily bread, then you're a materialist. You just believe in God. You're still a materialist. You're still focused on everything in this world. That's all you care about. You just included God in the equation. And now you're a materialist who believes in God, who's wasting God's time by praying for bread instead of divine love or something worthwhile. Then within spirituality, you get these two basic camps. The monistic, nihilistic, everything should become nothing camp, which has some serious problems with it. Some serious issues. Namely, that doesn't explain how we even got this world in the first place, filled with variety. Number two, it devalues love, compassion, emotion, empathy. All the greatest things that you experience as a conscious being in this world now don't actually have any value. Because empathy, compassion, they all depend on having another. Like a big black snake, gonna swallow you. Like a python. Not really a cobra. Cobra's bite. It's like a python. It's gonna swallow you whole. And on the eastern side, the east is the land of the rising sun. It's the most important direction. It's the basic direction. And so on the eastern side, so it's kind of two halves, materialism and spirituality, south and west, and then east and north, spirituality. Within that, it's impersonalism and personalism on that eastern side. You know where east is here? Anybody know where east is? You would think, right? It's that way? Actually, east is right there. You know why? Because wherever the deities are is automatically east. Once you sit in the temple, there's a whole thing with the directions and where you face during meditation, things like that. And so you're always supposed to face east. Kind of like Muslims face Mecca, but in the east, in our tradition, in Hinduism, Buddhism, east is the direction to face. It's the important direction. And that rule stops the moment you set foot in the temple. And then for all purposes, east is whatever direction the deities are facing, because that's the most auspicious direction. So yes, from a material point of view, east is that way. I was just having fun. On the eastern side is bhakti. A loving, intimate relationship with the divine. You don't just love people in this world, you can also love the divine. And not just a formal love, but an intimate love. You can fall in love with Krishna. The word Krishna means the all-attractive one. Krishna is the ultimate lovable object, the transcendental Cupid, the source of all existence, which is also omnibenevolent and the source of all love. And just a little bit, if you just dig a little bit. But how will you know where to dig? You don't know where to dig. So the scriptures come. That's the astrologer. And they give you this information. You didn't even know there was a treasure. You were just sad. But then somebody came along with good tidings. You know what the word gospel means? It means good news. Gospel means good news. Somebody came along with good news. There's a treasure. Your father, Krishna, was a rich man and woman. They left you a huge inheritance. You just don't know. Well, where do I find it? Yeah, you can't figure that one out either. You didn't know you had it, and you didn't know how to find it. So we're coming to tell you that you have a treasure. You have an inheritance. It's yours. And then where you can find it. And to tell you where to find it, we'll tell you where not to look. Don't look for materialism, pious or impious. Don't even look to yoga and all its mystic perfections and get haunted by that. Don't look to impersonalism and devour your individuality and temporarily lose your capacity for love and devalue empathy and compassion. No, you need to augment and excite and exalt those things. And so dig on the east. Chant the holy name. Be a devotee. Love Krishna. And through loving one thing, loving Krishna, because Krishna is the hub of the universe, the cynosure of all reality, then naturally you love everything. By watering the root of a tree, the whole tree flourishes. You do good for yourself, you do good for everybody else as well. That's the meaning of the parable. There's a verse in the Gita. Tapasvi bhyo adhiko yogi. A yogi, the word yogi here is not used in the way I just used it to refer to people seeking after mystic perfection and that kind of stuff. The word yogi here is indicated as someone who is linked to something higher. It's a generic term, as you'll see. Tapasvi bhyo adhiko yogi. One yogi is greater than all the tapasvis. The tapasvis are the guys on the western side who are trying to get mystic perfection through personal austerities. Karmi bhyo. Jnani bhyo. Tapasvi bhyo adhiko yogi. Tapasvi bhyo adhiko yogi. Jnani bhya api mato adhika. I consider one yogi to be greater than all of the jnanis. That's the northern side, the impersonalists. This is a verse in the Gita. I told you the parable, but there's a verse in the Gita that actually says this. Karmi bhyas chadiko yogi. One yogi is greater than all the karmis. That's the southern path. Tasmad yogi bhav Arjuna. Therefore be a yogi. Sometimes people say, oh yeah, C.S. Lewis, he wrote a book called The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, very famous series. He wrote a bunch of other stuff too, very famous author. He once said, I like the Hindus, but I can never get them to believe in anything or say what they believe in, and they just seem to go with whatever I say, and so I like them, but I don't even know what they believe. He lived in England. And there was a large Hindu population in England for several hundred years. They're totally integrated into English society. But he obviously was dealing with some Indians who were just, sort of neo-Hindu, wouldn't agree to anything, kind of going with whatever, So he wrote like this in a letter. The truth is, Hinduism is extremely hierarchical. And they wrote the books on polemics. And they've been arguing, debating philosophy since Europeans were living in caves. And so here you have a verse from Krishna where, as opposed to going, yeah, just do whatever you want, yato mat tato pat, whatever opinion you have, follow that path. He's offering exactly the opposite. He's offering you a comparative analysis of different ways of relating to transcendence and telling you which one's the best. So one yogi, greater than all these guys. Greater than all these guys, greater than all these guys. Tasmat yogi bhav Arjuna. Be a yogi. Yogi nam, but what kind of yogi? He hasn't said bhakti yet, has he? Yogi nam api, the next verse. Yogi nam api sarve sham, of all yogis. Mat gatena antar atmana, one who is dedicated to me and within themselves makes me their goal. Shradhavan bhajate yomam, and one who worships me with great faith. Bhajate means does bhakti. The root of bhakti is bhajate is in the verb, third person, present tense, singular. He worships me. He does bhakti to me. She does bhakti to me. How? Shradhavat, with faith. Sameyukta tamomata. Sameyukta tamomata. They are the most united with me. They are the most yoga. Yukta is the past participle of yoga. It means yoga. They are the most. Yukta tama. They are the most yoga. Me mata. That's my opinion. Of course, Krishna is God, so his opinion is a big deal. Shadavam bhajate yama. Sa me yukta. He, me, yukta tama, most yoga, mata. I consider him to be. He is considered by me to be the most yoga. So this same parable that we just explored is actually encapsulated in 2 verses of the Gita, along with the hierarchy and everything. Krishna says, Manushyanam sahasreshu, out of thousands of people, Manushyanam sahasreshu, kaschit yatati siddhaye. Even like maybe one person, one person will strive for perfection. Siddha. Yatanta api siddhanam. And of those strivers, and even of the perfected, kaschin maveti tattvataha. Maybe one person knows me in truth. Jnanavan jamanam bahunam jamanamante jnanavam mam prapadyante. This is in the next chapter. So those 2 verses, and the next chapter has these 2 verses. Bahunam jamanamante. After many lives. Jnanavam, one who actually has knowledge. Not the jnana up here that takes you in the wrong direction, but actually has knowledge. Jnanavam mam prapadyante. They approach me. Vasudevam sarvamiti. They realize that Krishna is all that truly is. Samahatma, Sudurlabha. Such a Mahatma, such a great soul, is Sudurlabha. It's very rare to find. Very rarely achieved that one becomes such a great soul. So rather than making paltry and trivial resolutions during the month of January, that most probably you won't keep, thereby eroding away at your value and your power of commitment and your integrity. And rather than focusing on some paltry things like most people do on January 1st and making that what you focus on as being most important, instead of really starting to think about who am I, why am I here, what's the purpose of life, what's the long game. I don't want to just build a sandcastle. Can I do more? And have the tide come and take it away. Is there something more I can do? What are my options? And so thinking like that, we can then look at this parable and the different things people are doing with their lives. We can see the trivialness and the wasp-like suffering that most people undergo with materialism never satisfying them, and the specters they chase after, and the snakes they get eaten by. And we can think through this stuff and then take direction from the Veda, take direction from our tradition, dig on the eastern side, and find what we were always looking after. Find what we were always looking for. Find an endless love. Find find a love, supreme. A forever love. A love that includes all things and all people. Something which values all of the gifts you've been given and doesn't throw them away. Your individuality, your cognizance, your ability to think and feel, to love, to feel empathy, compassion. And we can exalt those things and touch transcendence with them. That's a New Year's resolution worth making. But to make it on New Year's is cheap because it's so much more valuable. And so that's the kind of things we should be touching daily and thinking about daily and committing ourselves to daily, or even just practicing till we get to a point where we can commit to it and not artificially doing so just because the day changed. Okay. All right, let's do a little kirtan. Thank you very much. Happy New Year, Hare Krishna.